Hallo zusammen und herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Episode des Digital Download. Oops. Good afternoon, good morning, and good day wherever you may be joining us from, and welcome to a new edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on IBGR on TuneIn Radio, through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're delving into the power of intuition in career decision-making with Jessica Pryce-Jones, executive coach, facilitator, and author. With a background in finance and psychology, Jessica has unique insights into how professionals can leverage their intuition to navigate their careers. But before we bring Jessica on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we're doing this, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged. Tim, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and really looking forward to talking to Jess today. I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Change Makers, and I'm going to get Jessica's plug in now before she starts, which is that Jessica has written the book, Intuition at Work, Using Your Gut Feelings to Get Ahead, which is available on Amazon and good bookstores.
Excellent. Perfect. Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite and Tim's business partner. And this is a fascinating topic and one that seems blindingly obvious. It will be really interesting to see whether, things that are foolproof are in fact, I could be a big fool. So let's wait and see how this unfolds. I'm looking forward to it enormously.
Excellent, thanks. Richard.
Oh, good afternoon. Yeah, Richard Jones from Curate. I'm a relative newbie to the whole world of social selling. But what I can say is throughout my career, I've always followed my gut. And quite often it doesn't necessarily... usually I'm right, put it that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that I end up with the best outcome, but I do generally feel that my gut takes me in the right direction.
Looking forward to that discussion. And myself, Bertrand Godillot, I am the managing partner and founder of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA Ignite partner. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Jessica. Jessica's blend of corporate experience and psychological expertise provides a unique perspective on the often overlooked role of intuition in career success. As she notes in her profile, she believes in using hard, soft, and intuitive information to get to the heart of complex professional issues. Let's bring Jessica on. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure that I deserve all those accolades, but I'm feeling very flattered.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Bonjour, et nous sommes très avis d'avoir Jessica, très heureux d'avoir Jessica avec nous. And I'm using that because Jessica lives in France, so I'll take that opportunity. We don't have that every single day. Excellent. So good afternoon and welcome, Jessica. Jessica, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
So I started with a degree in Latin and Greek, and then I did a teacher training, and I knew on day one that I'd made a mistake in doing the teacher training in the school that I was in. That was the first hint that I got, okay, I've made a poor choice here. And I made a second very poor choice in my career, and I went to work in financial services. And, it was one of those very prestigious organizations, Marble Steps, Marble Hall. And even as I walked in, I thought, what am I doing here? And I was so unhappy. I was absolutely miserable. Anyway, I lasted 10 years in financial services and then did a psychology degree. and that started me on another whole career, and began an organization and looked after that for 15 years. And then I realized actually what I really like is working in the room with people. I wasn't enjoying running my organization, so I exited. And I just love, what I really love doing is enabling other people to do what they do. So that's what gives me joy and passion.
Great, great. So, Jessica, let's start with a foundational question. What exactly is intuition, and how does it differ from logic and reason?
Okay, so let's separate those two, because the what this thing is, of course, people can argue till the cows come home about what intuition is. And some people say it's knowing without knowing how you know, which sounds very meta. And I say that it's a feeling of knowing, so that you've got both the somatic stuff going on, what's going on for you, and also the cognitive thing. Because for me, it is generally a bit of both. And you might be more skewed one way than the other. You might be a more feeling before thought person, or a more thought before a feeling person. But I do think it involves both. It's not just about having something going on in your guts without recognizing what that is. So that's what I think it is. And also there's a sense of energy for me involved with it, that you're excited and drawn towards something, or you're going, that feels a bit fishy, I'm not sure about that. So that those thoughts keep popping back into your head, so they come back to you. If you leave it, it will pop up again, and it's just this kind of sometimes it's a quiet thing, but sometimes it's wow screaming at you. So people experience it differently. So that was the first bit, and then you said, how does it differ from reason and analysis? And there's a really nice quote, which I can't remember where I stole it from, but I definitely stole it from somewhere. It wasn't me. And it was someone who said that actually analysis is a slow worker but a fast learner, and that intuition is a fast worker but a slow learner. So that's why you can think that you've got an intuition and actually it's something else. It's wishful thinking or ego or other things getting muddled up. So I rather like that as a difference between the two.
Now, you're not saying when we make decisions we do it wholly on intuition, are you?
No, definitely not. Thanks, Tim. No, I think it's a both and. I think if you, it would be very bad if you wanted to say, okay, I want to take a plane from, I don't know, Dallas to Dubai. Let's intuit which airline will cost me the least. That is like, hello, ChatGPT, could you give me some starters for 10? But when you're making a decision, for example, about your career or about something complex where there are multiple answers and there's no clear one right thing, of course you go and get the data, and of course you think about it, but then you check in with yourself about how you're feeling about that and what your intuition is telling you.
So I've got a question here. I've always been, I like to think, quite an intuitive person and flying by the seat of the pants. So I get a lot of this, like, I'm in a situation and I think, okay, this feels like the right thing for me to do. Mm-hmm. And then either I invariably make a mistake. I either don't follow my intuition and realize that I should have done, or do follow my intuition and realize that I shouldn't have done. So how do I balance these two things? Because I think we all are presented with a situation and we have like a knee-jerk reaction to that, for better or worse. And how do we then kind of work through whether or not this is an emotional reaction to the situation, or whether or not this is actually leading with your kind of your gut feel?
Yes, I mean, we've all been in those situations where, you've hired somebody and you there's been a little quiet voice in your mind going, don't do it, and you've done it anyway, and then you live to regret it, and it's very expensive and painful to undo. we've all done that, and we've all rationalized away our intuitions as well. I did that just the other day. Very annoying. So for me, I think that if you can and if you have the time, incubation is the way to do it. So you sit with it and you leave it and you incubate it. That's one way of doing it. And
so just talk about incubate. When you say that, I mean, we kind of know what the word means, but crystallize that and what exactly do you mean by incubate?
So incubate, it's like being an ostrich sitting on your eggs. You just wait. Does it still feel right? Do you have that feeling of internal alignment or misalignment? And if there's a sense of, I want to do it, but I'm feeling that there's a niggle, where does that niggle take you? Because good intuitions should take you to where the issue is. So when you're really in tune with yourself, you go, oh, that's the thing. So incubation, sit on it for if you've only got 10 minutes, fine, but take the 10 minutes. If you've got 10 hours, even better. So that would be my first piece of advice. And the second one is it's yes, no. So these are tools. I'll give you two more. So you just literally get some Post-it notes. Write yes, no on yes on one, no on another. Sit with your issue and pull out. Is it yes or is it no to your question? Come back. Do it again. Is it yes or no? So that you kind of testing and retesting yourself.
Right.
So that's another way of doing it. And the third one is a lovely one, which I got from an interview I did for the book, because I did about 60 interviews talking to people. And this was a polar explorer, Matt. And, his intuition, if he's going to go left or right across a crevasse, is really a matter of life or death.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what he said he did was he flips a coin into the air, and it's not to see which side the coin lands on, but it's to check in which side does he want the coin to land on, heads or tails. And that's the intuition.
Yeah, it's funny you should say
Excellent.
that, because often we are doing something, usually it's a leisure activity and we're doing something. We go, well, I'm just going to do one more of those and then I'm going to stop. And then you do one more and you go, actually, I'm just going to do one more. I'm just going to do one more until you get that result that you want. And you go, okay, now I can stop because I've achieved what I thought I wanted to achieve in the beginning. So I guess that crystallizing this to understand what you're trying to achieve and to validate the decision that you want the outcome to be is it's a smart way of doing it, isn't it?
Yes. And I find that when I'm coaching, often it's really interesting. People know what it is that they want, but they're coming to me for validation that they're making the right decision. It's not that they don't know what to do. It's, I just want someone to validate my gut for me. It's quite interesting. So how does it show up for you, Adam?
Well, we do a lot of coaching and we see exactly the same thing. I don't think there's been a single person that we've ever spoken to that hasn't known what they've needed to do. And a lot of what we do is we help them understand why they need to do this. And then we help them to understand how they need to do this. But in terms of the stuff they're actually doing, they know what they need to do, but they make a whole host of excuses. It's really interesting. It's like, I guess that like psychologists or psychotherapists unable to analyze themselves, we are every bit as prone to not doing the things we need to do as the people that we coach. So finding strategies for us to self-diagnose this stuff, I think is really important.
Yeah. I think there's another thing that is interesting to start to observe, which often when you're looking for a kind of an intuitive, like, where am I in all of this, what we fail to do is notice what's going on in our environment. And sometimes, what your attention is being drawn to is also part of the answer. And so, what is your attention being drawn to? And that's that's a great way also to go from the external to the internal. So I've got a pair of candlesticks sitting on the desk in front of me, and my attention is being drawn to that. So then I would start to question, why is my attention being drawn to the candlesticks? And what do candlesticks mean to me? And just go along that little route. That's a great way into intuition as well.
Because I asked this question earlier in the week, and Richard said, quite quickly came back and said, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, I may have got this the wrong way around, but you said, was it every job you went for, you accepted, was based on intuition except for one, and that one went really badly. Everything else was based on intuition, and you went for jobs based on, this just feels right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of sort of weigh it up in my mind. It was a sort of a mental balance sheet, sort of the positives, the negatives, the credits and the debits, if you like, and I can do that. Well, I think a lot of us can do that quite quickly, and occasionally it becomes a little bit more sort of, a little bit more equal, and that's where you probably need to flip the coin, but have a gut instinct as to which side you want it to turn up. So yeah.
So if we are not considering our audience most probably made of professionals, how can they identify and interpret their intuitive signals, especially when it comes to career context?
So is that a question for me, I guess?
Yes.
Yes. I just want to comment on what Dr. Huck has written. So one day reason said to the heart, I am a guide for those who are lost. That is beautiful. And I think that when we tune into, what is our heart telling us? What is our stomach telling us? What's going on for us? And am I feeling hot or cold about this? Have I got a warning bell going off in my head? Those kind of things. Those are the intuitions, and those are the little signals that we're giving ourselves. If we don't learn to recognize our own signals, we will never be intuitive. And it's in today's world of when you're always on, and you're on this or you're on this, your phone. It's really, really hard. So for me, it's about stopping and just taking a moment, shut your screen. And what am I feeling about this? What am I sensing going on for myself? What thoughts are popping into my mind? What images? Some people don't get images in their mind's eye. I was amazed when I did research for the book to hear that 5% of people have no mental images. I see Tim, you're going, ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was as high as that. I thought it was a lesser number. But those people will certainly have a sense of energy or what's going on in their mind's ear, if it's not their mind's eye. And if you can't do that, you can certainly start saying, okay, intuition, hello, I want to treat you as a friend. Let's have a relationship with this thing. What are you telling me right now? So I think it's perfectly fine to start to talk to your intuition and treat it as the friend that it can be.
Because one of the things you say in the book as well, Jess, is that as we move up through an organization, actually, the more we rely on intuition, because as you said earlier, it's that hire, or should we buy that company, or should we sell the company? And while we can have people going away and putting together a spreadsheet and coming up with facts about, we should actually be buying it or selling it. There's also, when we come to the decision, there is an element to intuition. Should we walk away from it? Adam and I met somebody this week, and and we both got a gut reaction when we met the individual that we didn't want to do work with that person.
And isn't it quick?
And it was. I mean, but the best way to sum it in a word that we can use on this show is a bully.
Yeah.
And we both got that feeling independently. And so sometimes that, you get this gut feeling and you go, but so how can we, so the question is really, how can we, if we need to understand this, how is it that we can really get and understand the intuition? How can we start leaning into it? How can we start feeling it?
So I think that you did a brilliant thing, which is checking in with each other. So I don't know who raised the issue, but if you're sensing something, probably somebody else is too. And the main thing that you need is feedback. So to get better at it, you've got to get feedback. And for me, that's about having a diary or just noting it down. So I've got a little note on my iPhone, and I just add it to my note. And so I've this is my intuition. And am I right? Am I wrong? And then you can start gamifying it for yourself. At the moment, I'm on 82%. So, which I think is about standard. Some things you're going to get wrong, and also they might be the right at the time, but they turn out wrong later. So, you might have an intuition about a job, for example, and then think, okay, it's right, and you need to go and do it. But actually, something shifts in there, and it turns out to then not be right. So, we're working in a moving landscape, and I think that we have to accept that. And it would be exactly the same as if you did a spreadsheet. So, you can make all the assumptions that you want and plug them into a spreadsheet, and then out it pops. Are spreadsheets always right? No, they're not. You're working on past data. So past data does not describe the future. So we've all been there too.
Yeah. Just a quick one. How much of our intuition do you think is derived from our experience? And does our intuition get sort of more highly tuned the more experience we pick up over time?
Oh, totally. Yes. So a lot of it is our experience, but equally interesting, there are two things that go against that. One is that, you can have a 21-year-old who's just starting their first job, and you wouldn't say, actually, you've got zero intuition, have you? You'd be saying to them, come on, what's your gut telling you? And pushing them if you're a decent boss. And they can have some very good intuitions. So yes, experience helps, but it's not the be all and end all. And I forgot what point 2 was. So can't tell you. Oh, yes, there we go. You can walk into an environment that you don't know and still have a very good sense about it. So, is that because you know human beings and how different are human beings?
So here's a question. I was very upset when Steve Jobs died. I thought, although he was a hideous human being in many ways, he was incredibly inspirational in terms of what he achieved. And one of the things that I particularly like that he did was there are obviously countless recordings of him speaking and addressing audiences. And one of them is his Stanford commencement speech, where he discusses a number of different issues and things that he's learned in his life. And one of them was he says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And he said about how when he went to Stanford and then he dropped out, but he stayed there so he could drop in on all of these other courses, and that helped inform his view of the visual world and typography and things like that, which all came together when he made the Mac many years later. And I think that there is a this was a podcast about career and how your gut feel can help you develop your career. I'm sure that there will be many instances where people obviously there's a commercial pressure for you to have a job, particularly when you're younger and you've got big bills and you need to pay your bills, and you're potentially in a situation where you take a job because you feel you have to take a job, not because you necessarily want to take the job. And then fast forward for 5 years or whatever and look back at that decision, and you kind of are in this situation where if you've taken one road, you take the job because you have to, you're grossly unhappy and you have a grim time for 5 years. or you decide not to take the job and you don't get paid for a month or 2 or 3, and then you land the most perfect job in the world, which catapults your career somewhere entirely different. And you can easily see this looking back.
Mm.
You certainly can't see it looking forward. So how much bravery do you need to implement in following that kind of gut feel, your most authentic self? Because we, all of us, are looking for purpose in what we do, and a dream and a mission, and so often I think when I look at the people that I interact with in the business world, that's taken very much a back seat in their lives, and they're almost a passenger in their own journey through life.
Mm.
So how brave do you need to be?
I think, I'm not sure whether it's a question of bravery or just being open to being open. So I used to do quite a lot of career stuff at Judge Business School in Cambridge. And it was really interesting. It was people's networks that were really holding them back, because their parents or their partners or their siblings, friends would be saying, you ought, you should. And that was a big kind of sticking point for them. But I think if you can try out your current self or your future self and think, okay, what am I feeling? Have I got energy for this? And you can try out 2 or 3 selves at the same time as you're exploring your world. And just by staying open to being open, look about you. So I think that we get influenced, obviously, by the people around us, which doesn't necessarily help. But I do like this Herminia Ibarra's work when she says, just like take a step towards, 2 or 3 possible selves and see how they would fit you before you make any big and bad decisions in terms of career. But I think there's another thing which is interesting, another piece of data which is interesting in terms of career, which is mostly we tend to stick with jobs too long. And there's really good evidence that people don't leave jobs soon enough. Who was the guy who wrote Freakonomics? Steve Levitt. He did a really nice piece of research. And because one of the things that he noticed was that people were struggling to make the decision to quit their jobs. So he set up a little website, and he ran people through a whole series of questions about would they stick to the decision that an online yes/no, if what the outcome of that was, would they stick to the decision that the computer had given them? And they ran through all these questions, and then they were told, leave your job, don't leave your job. And it was kind of almost like random whether it was leave or don't leave. But the people who were followed up 6 months later, who had actually left their jobs as a result of going through this process, Steve Levitt's process, were much happier than those who hadn't and had stuck with it. So his understanding is that we don't leave our jobs soon enough, and we are not brave in taking the decisions to quit, and we just think we're going to tough it out. And when actually we should go, you know what? Quitting is what gets you ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but it's kind of it's not a pure data set, is it? Because the mere fact you're going onto a website saying, should I leave my job or not, means you're not happy in your job.
Yeah.
If you're not happy in your job, clearly, so whether or not you're progressing through your career massively well, or you're stuck in the same role for an eternity, actually, if you love what you do and you're happy doing it, all things considered, that's a pretty good place to be. And I think that the happiness thing is only part of the equation, isn't it?
Well, courage is a big part too. Having the courage to say, right, I'm off. I'm going to try something new. And I do think that's the hard bit. That to be courageous.
And maybe we can add trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a question to me. You've got, because I think at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. You feel the energy, you feel that this is something that you should be doing, but how much should you trust this, especially when it gets into non-conventional directions, basically?
Yes, And I think that's where coincidence. We got lots of coincidence and serendipity coming in here. So you think, I want a new job, you start casting about, then you start meeting some more people, and it's then who you come across in that. So it's almost like you put it's the thought, word, and deed stuff going on, isn't it? Making itself real.
And when I say I want a new job, and then Facebook starts showing me job adverts, that's not serendipity, is it? That's
that's called algorithm. That's called, you better get into your privacy settings and do something about them.
Yeah, but now we've had this conversation, obviously we will all be getting adverts for new jobs, won't we? But I think that it's, you said about dynamically, journeying through and this stuff. But Sir Ken Robinson, the late great Sir Ken Robinson, in his TED talk, he talks about how we explore life dynamically based on the circumstances that are presented to us and the skills that we've acquired along the way. And that makes it, I'm not the expert on this, does that make it very difficult for you to plan a career? If you go to medical school and you qualify as a doctor and then you go into medicine, your career is pretty much mapped out for you, because people are always going to get ill and they're always going to need to get better. So therefore you've got a job and you're never going to run out of customers. But in so many other endeavors, there are so many external factors in whether or not the industry that you've chosen, or the role that you've chosen, or the company you've chosen, or the product you've chosen actually has any longevity or any relevancy. So you become a musician and you have a huge hit, and there's no guarantee that you're going to have a huge hit with your next album. Or, you launch a product which becomes flavor of the month, and then all of a sudden it isn't flavor of the month anymore. And so how can you plan a strategy? Can you plan a long-term career? Or do you just have to go through, and you said about being open to things happening. Is that the key?
I think so. I mean, career agility. Have you ever met someone? I've only met someone once, and he was complete pain, absolute ghastly person, who said, I'm going to go to university and I'm going to get my MBA, and then I'm going to go and consult for 5 years, and then I'm going to go to my dad's business and I'm going to turn it into a worldwide thing. And damn it, he did, because he's thoroughly unpleasant. But most of us, it's being agile about what we see in our environments, isn't it? And going, oh, well, look, that's interesting. I'm going to move towards that thing because it's drawing me in some way. I feel a sense of energy towards it. I feel a pull towards it. And that's how I came to be a coach. I met someone back in the 90s and I thought, wow, that sounds like a fantastic career. Oh, I better go and find out some more. And that's what took me towards that. So I think it's more the agility and going, what interests me now that I feel a sense of energy for and a pull towards, which again, that's the intuitive thing working. Rather than heads down. No one can do that these days and say, right, I'm going to do 40 years at X Corp. I mean, forget it. It won't happen.
What you start out doing these days can change just by dint of the way technology evolves. Jobs that they often say that jobs that people do today simply won't exist in however many years into the future. So you're going to always have to rely on some degree of intuition to go where you think the opportunity might be, because you can't map out an entire career of 30 years without the world changing around you.
Oh, absolutely. And there's so many kids who say, I want to go and be a print journalist. And you go, please don't do that. Even I can see that's not wise.
Yeah.
Just two comments in the chat. First of all, this one, which is a bit refreshing. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Hack.
And then we've got this one, which is
Jared Robin.
Yeah, experience works against you if you're not open to change, and that leads me to talk about the difference maybe between intuition and fear. So because we talked about the positive aspect of that, I've got the energy, I can feel it, but there's also maybe sometimes fear and anxiety, which is actually maybe seen as intuition. But how do you tell the difference, basically?
Between fear and excitement?
Between fear and anxiety and intuition. Yeah. So, it says, don't go there. But the reality is there's nothing to do with intuition.
For me, anxiety is a sharper sense of a more urgent thing. If I'm anxious about something, and it's probably more time limited. It's about a thing, isn't it? I'm anxious that I'm going to miss my train. I'm anxious that I'm going to screw up a presentation. I'm anxious that I won't get to the end of my to-do list by the end of the week. Whereas intuition, I think, has a more vague feeling. So for me, there's a sharpness to that anxiety. If I'm anxious, but let's take it in a negative way. I might have an intuition that someone will be a bad hire. Would that make me anxious? I mean, this did happen to me. I interviewed someone for a role, and I went, "Oh, she's pregnant. She's not telling us. She's just found out she's pregnant." And I asked her a question. You can't say, "Are you pregnant?" Obviously. But I went upstairs and I said to the office manager, "Listen, if you want to hire her, take her on. I think, though, she's pregnant and there will be trouble." And we did hire her, and I was right. So that was, it wasn't an anxious thing that I had. It was just a more kind of spongy feeling. And I think that those spongy feelings are very different from the peak that anxiety gives you.
I see the two together occasionally, because I'm anxious that I might miss my train, but my gut feel says it will be late anyway, so I shouldn't have to worry.
I'm loving that, Richard. What a bloke.
See, we needed comedy on here.
I'm permanently anxious I'm going to miss my trains because I'm always running late.
So maybe we can follow up on that and look at the misconceptions about intuition. Are there obvious misconceptions that you can identify?
Intuition isn't always right. What people identify as an intuition, but I'd say go back and take a look at it, because probably you're misidentifying what your intuition is. But I think Bill Gates said, it's something like, I'm misquoting him here, but my intuition is right 80% of the time, but that's good enough for me to get the bat and swing it. And I like that as an approach. So, but I think it's not to be. I was working in a consultancy this morning, and someone came up and said to me, "I think you're completely wrong. There's no such thing as intuition." And I just said, "Let's take this one offline and talk about it later." It is a thing that does exist, that people use and don't really talk about. And if we did talk about it more, other people would get better at it. And it's a great shortcut. So in a volatile, complex, uncertain, ambiguous situations that leadership is these days, there are no definites. There just is no black and white. Everything is grey. So we need all the tools that we can get. And so if intuition is there as a tool, let's get really good at this thing. And if we were in any other society except a weird one, like, weird, white, educated, rich, democratic, etc. If we were in any other society other than a weird one, we'd be going, of course we're going to use your intuition. So if we were first peoples anywhere, that's one of the first things we'd learn. And it's such a basic human skill because
it's
pre linguistic.
It's still used even in the white educated. I guess from watching TV shows, most crimes in New York are solved through a hunch, aren't they? Which is intuition in another word. But I from my own experience, and I quote Lewis Carroll here. I give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. So I'm very good at judging people's characters and then parking that judgment for logic. So I met this person, I think they're a complete idiot and I don't want anything to do with them. And then in spite of myself, I get to know them. And then I think, actually, they were all right. And then at some point down the road, something happens that I think, no, I was right in the first place. They are an idiot, or whatever the feeling that I have about them is. So how can I develop that spidey sense in order that I actually pay attention to it rather than just ignore it? Because I'm sure that most people in their daily lives have these intuitions and they tend not to action them.
Yes.
Because, like you said about your friends, oh no, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Well, actually, you're not me, so I'm going to do it. How do we tough it out like that?
So that's where writing it down and getting feedback on whether you were right or wrong helps, so that you can start to show yourself that you have got this thing and you're using it and you're right or you're wrong. And it's quite binary. And then you test yourself in small situations. So I wouldn't be saying, "Ooh, I wonder what shoes Adam's going to wear today to work." And damn, he put the grey ones on. I was wrong.
You would have been wrong because I haven't got grey ones. But yes.
Well, brown, blue, purple, whatever. But I would start to say, okay, I'm going to go into this meeting. Let me just think about what kind of emotions might there be there. How might someone show up? And just, am I right? Am I not right? So that you start to just give yourself little tests in this thing, because that is how you can then go, all right, yes, no, it's you give yourself some evidence, and you are never going to use your intuition with the big decisions if you haven't done it with some of the small stuff.
Yes.
So you've got to do the small stuff first.
So you need to train yourself to follow your intuition by proving to yourself from the analytical side of your mind that actually when I have this feeling, I'm right 80% of the time. Yep. So it's a better bet necessarily than following the data, to which I'm seldom privy to all of it.
Yes.
We've got another comment from Dr. Acker. I am more interested in exploring more on faith, versus fear, which is kind also of an interesting angle, right?
I think I need more information on the faith versus fear, but it's the certainty that comes from within. So that we're listening to, I guess. I think that's
what this is all about. Yeah,
is saying. So how do you do that? But that's coming back and having some proof for yourself. So that's where again, I sense this about someone. You sense it the same. You've got some proof. You trust yourself. You trust in your judgment about people. And for me, judgment is pretty much an intuition. So that you both got the same feeling, didn't you, about the person that you didn't like, or thought actually that they won't be a good business partner. And so, that's feedback, that's confirmation. And it's really interesting because I interviewed someone who invests. Was running a VC fund for my book. And he said that he makes all his decisions based on gut. And he looked at one deal and he just got the synthesis of the deal. And he just said, it's never going to work, looking at it on paper. And I said, how do you do that? And he just said, I've just been doing deals and maybe it is my expertise. I just knew it would never work. And of course it didn't. but when you post rationalize the thought that you had, it's never as your articulation of it is never as intense and strong and as good as that internal sense of it's never going to work. So it's this is where it's so hard, and it's so hard in talking to other people. In the same way, so Owen said to me this as well, that he walked into a lab and he immediately said, "We got to invest." They talked to the founder for 10 minutes, and he said, "This is a deal we have to do," to one of his colleagues, and they didn't know everything about it. They didn't understand all the technology at the time, but he just knew that they needed to acquire this business. And he said that it was extremely difficult to go and explain why he had this very strong intuition. They did acquire the business, and I mean, he was right. But there we go.
I think you talked earlier, if I trust my notes, but you mentioned ego.
Oh yes.
So what's the difference? How can you tell you're driven by your ego, basically?
Well, I think if you're never prepared to listen to feedback from someone else, or to have your decision challenged, or to say, actually, I was wrong. Hello, ego shouting, probably quite loudly. And intuition wouldn't do that to you. You just be you. So if it's an intuitive perspective that you're coming from, you know, would you be taking the same stance? Probably not. Probably not. And I think the other thing about intuition is if someone else overrides it, you can go back when, you know, time will tell. That is the great thing with intuition. Time will always tell.
Mm-hmm.
Serendipity. Got serendipity through analytics. Oh, Dr. Hack, I don't know what you've been smoking, but I want some of it. Serendipity. Serendipity, I think, is a lovely, beautiful thing as well. Which you often then think, oh my goodness, the world is speaking to me, the universe is speaking to me, because you have some issue. I mean, I don't know whether this has happened to either of you. You go, I'm just going to read this paper, and you read a paper or an article, and then the very next meeting that you go into, you go, that was the thing I had to read, because the issue comes up. So you've been given the answer before you even know you needed it. So serendipity is a beautiful thing, and there's now there's some really interesting work about coincidence and serendipity, because lots of labs at the same time are coming up with similar results, and there's now a journal looking at how it is that this happens when people aren't knowing that other research is going on at the same time. They haven't been in touch with each other.
Yeah, so we believe in serendipity, but we also believe that you can manufacture a certain amount of that. So, like you said about, you know, you read this paper, and then at the very next meeting, the paper that you have read is valuable because it helps inform your viewpoint on something,
or someone else's.
Yeah, but if you read lots of papers, you are maximizing the chance of that happening. Mm-hmm. So, you know, our role is to help people be in the right place at the right time, to be able to have conversations that lead to commercial interactions with people. And we teach people a whole load of skills that they need to employ. However, the most important skill is they need to get off their arse and actually do stuff. So, you know, it's like if network and building relationships with people is the most important thing, you can either sit at home typing stuff, or you can go and meet people, either virtually or in the real world. And it's taking that step that is the most important step. And I guess that again, like joining the dots looking back. Subsequently, you can see value in it. You can't predict that there's going to be value there, but you know, if you shake hands and introduce yourself to 100 people a week, every single week, sooner or later, you're going to say, here's what I do. And someone's going to say, oh my God, that's serendipity because I need to buy some of that immediately. Okay.
Yes.
Well, from a sales perspective, that's the new door knocking, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think also, you're never going to change the world by clearing your inbox. But you might just change your world by going out there and meeting some people and having some new ideas and chatting with whoever's in front of you, getting some answers. So
Simon Wilkins says, I must have a lot of intuition. 12 wrong placements in 22 years. I assume, Simon, you're being sarcastic.
I hope that Simon's on the next one. He'll take some of that into account. Yeah.
All right.
So just so you know, Jessica has a new book out because it's the adverts now, you see. And I'm for those listening later on in radio, I'm holding it up. It's called Intuition at Work: Using Your Gut Feelings to Get Ahead.
Thank you, Tim.
Jessica, this has been great. Where can people learn more? So we've seen it in the book, of course, but how can we get in touch with you?
Please find me on LinkedIn. I'm about to launch a new website, which will be Pryce-Jones.com. That should be around in a couple of weeks. And I really love chatting to people on LinkedIn. So please do find me there.
Okay,
Fantastic.
Excellent. Perfect. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You may scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists, to our guest, Jessica, and to our audience, thank you all.